wow. I mean, wow. Seriously, wow. This is honestly quite impressive. How do you even manage to fuck something this horrendously bad? So after a streak of shit episodes for 12 years straight with Doctor Who, consistently declining ratings, consistently declining quality, public perception in the toilet, Russell T Davies comes back to the show. Everyone's excited and everyone's happy. He announces the 14th Doctor as Ncuti Gatwa. Oh my god, we're even more excited. He then announces David Tennant and Catherine Tate will return. Oh my god, we're all excited. He then announces Doctor Who will be seen by a whole new audience because now Disney are backing it and distributing it to everyone all over the world on Disney+. Wow, wow, wow! The hype is unreal! Then we get the first episode of the new series of Doctor Who after an overall poor pool of episodes for the 60th and Christmas. And what's the first story that Russell gives us for series 14? What's his new vision for the show like with all of this backing and hype? Personally, I can't wait to see what his new vision for Doctor Who is like. With all of the excitement through the roof, we're greeted by... Are you fucking for real? Now, I don't want to spend any longer in this episode than I have to, so if you'll excuse me.
I just need to cook for a minute.
So this garbled chicanery starts unsurprisingly poorly exactly where we left off in Church on Ruby Road, and we get the basic Doctor Who lore dump for the supposed new viewers. Basic stuff we've all seen hundreds of times before, but unfortunately I think it perfectly highlights a problem with the lack of depth our characters have, and once again ignoring the 60th. While I like that the Doctor doesn't get too bogged down on Gallifrey being gone and the Time Lords being dead, why Ruby gives essentially no reaction to this is very questionable to say the least, and bordering on offensively lacking in depth to say the most. Like, I get that the Doctor isn't sad by this anymore and he brushes it off, but why Ruby doesn't ask more questions or show any real genuine concern for the Doctor after he tells her this is insane to me. Just think in the past how much the Doctor's people being gone has affected the companions in so many different situations, but here, I don't think Ruby ever brings it up again besides a scene later which is really just used to say who the Doctor is. Or at least if she does mention it, it's never in a meaningful way.
It's not fair. For your own planet, it burns.
That's just it. Don't you see, Donna? Can't you understand? If I could go back and save them, then I would, but I can't.
Great way of making Ruby feel like a person, and not just what she is, which is definitely the Doctor Who companion of all time. So we get an absolutely beautiful scene as the Doctor shows off what the TARDIS can do and they land 150 million years in the past. And we get a first for this show, which is actually quite interesting and funny, where Ruby steps on a butterfly and it completely changes who she is as a person, and quite literally changes her into this lizard thing, because the Doctor forgot to turn off the butterfly compensation switch. This is actually a scene which, despite cringing at in the trailer, I do quite like, as not only is it very funny with context, but it does actually make sense, since the TARDIS got sent on one of its worst spirals ever before the Doctor got to set it back up properly. And it does also add explanation to stuff like Ruby being able to survive the Devil's Cord, and countless other times in stories where the companions should have been wiped from existence, but just haven't. Except the Series 5 finale, that still makes no sense. Especially since the TARDIS was destroyed. One day, I'll review Series 5. I promise. One day I will explain to the world why Series 5 and the Smith era as a whole is really shitty. I understood that reference.
I just gave away 10 years of my life. Worth every second.
Though, isn't it strange how Ruby is so willing to move away from here after literally less than 2 minutes, just because the Doctor says so? The Doctor Who companion of all time. So we get an absolutely magnificent shot of the TARDIS flying to space station. I know a lot of people have complaints with the TARDIS always flying and never dematerializing anymore, and I have my own complaints with this, which will make more sense for me to discuss when I review the finale. So for now, I'm just going to compliment the shots because for me personally, I'll always have a soft spot for the TARDIS actually flying. One of the 7 Doctor Who episodes I had as a child, so I would watch on repeat, was The Runaway Bride. And my favourite scene in that story when I was younger was the scene where the Doctor chases down the taxi. So I love scenes like this.
Is that like a mat transporter like in Star Trek?
We gotta visit them one day.
Not Russell using the Moffat writing tactic where casual style over substance bollocks lines like this, which have massive universe implications, are just said and brushed off as if they don't even matter. Like here, you could at least just say that the Doctor was joking. Okay, looking back, it's likely he was joking. But still, I find lines like these really annoying, especially when other characters in universe just don't really acknowledge them and it's just brushed off. How many people did Moffat trick into thinking his error was well written? So the two encounter this monster with an absolutely superb design, and we get another fully, awfully edited chase sequence. This is something I neglected to mention in my review of Church on Ruby Road, but some of the editing decisions in this series so far have been extremely questionable. Because of the BBC being determined to keep me away from uploading, and my never-ending insistence on a high frame rate because I'm a quality whore, these pictures don't really do justice just to how bad this sequence is put together. Not only is the immersion and tension destroyed when you realise the Doctor and Ruby don't actually share any shots with the monster, except when they go in the lift, but it also doesn't help that the only shots of the monster are just shitty little Five Nights at Freddy's jump scare shots. And in case you hadn't noticed, it's not 2014 anymore, and this is not a game, so this just isn't remotely scary in the slightest. It's actually kind of a perfect parallel to Five Nights at Freddy's, because Five Nights at Freddy's now is also not scary. Like, even if I was back again as a 10-year-old when Security Breach came out, I would not be scared by that shit. I do like that the Doctor acknowledges that it was strange for him to be scared of it, as this does set up a squandered story beat later in the episode. And it's revealed they're on a baby farm, and we get yet another scene which shows off Ruby's lack of character, where she brings up the fact that she's looking for her parents, and the Doctor has a time machine, yet he brushes it off and then so does she. As someone who is so desperate for answers would do. The Doctor Who companion of all time. After we get the Doctor explaining why the baby farm is actually useful, which is fairly interesting, we get even more of Russell ripping off his own work. Sure, a lot of the giggle lifts a lot from Series 3, and even Series 4, with a few differences, and the Church on Ruby Road is structured almost identically to Rose, despite both missing the mark by a country mile. But this is literally the exact same scene in Series 1, down to the joke being exactly the same.
I think that's amazing. You want to see the bill?
10 minutes ago, that's the best signal ever. How much that cost?
The key difference being that the reason this is just nothing and this scene in the end of the world is so fantastic is because in the end of the world, this scene comes directly after Rose panics and is scared of the situation she's put herself in. She didn't even think about what she did. She just did it. But her ringing her mum grounds her back in reality and calms her down. Meanwhile here, Ruby is just so nonchalant about everything that it's hard to feel a connection to her in the story. Like, yeah, there's bits of excitement here and there. But besides that, you'd think she'd already been traveling with him for 6 months or something.
I have a feeling this is foreshadowing.
And the scene is just brushed past after, not giving us time to dwell on the character's emotions or mindset or anything meaningful like the end of the world did. Because why would we want to grow attached to the characters and explain the Doctor's newfound abilities to do this bullshit when we instead have to focus on the main plot of this episode, which is...
You, Mommy, Daddy.
Oh god! Oh my god! Oh my god! You can't hurt anyone anymore.
Oh my fucking god. What the fuck is that? That looks fucking awful, my days! How in the shit did this make it to air in the year of our Lord 2024? Are you having a fucking laugh? Oh god, there's even more. Any potential for redeeming factors in this episode are completely thrown out the window the second this little shit rolls on a screen. Seriously, these things look absolutely terrible. Ignoring the fact alone, an episode revolving around babies is the least appealing thing to me ever. Why on earth did they give them talking mouths? Would a speaker on the pram really have detracted from the story that much? Honestly, it would have made this episode at least watchable, since these things look so uncanny and creepy that just off-putting to watch. And because they just look so terrible, it just desecrates any immersion you could have for the story immediately. Anyone else watch those stupid cats and dogs films when they were a kid? Because that's exactly what this infantile dog shit is like, except babies are not as cute as cats or dogs, so I feel zero emotional connection to any of them. This is my dog. Look at him. He's beautiful. He's baby, he's 10, his name is Phoenix, and he's the best. He is cuter than anything in this godforsaken story. And honestly, after watching clips from that film for this video again, please tell me why this film looks so much better than this episode does. How old's this film again? Oh yeah, 20 fucking 3!
Space babies!
Get used to a lot of that because for some reason, despite being capable of being very funny, Russell forgot how to write jokes for anyone above the age of fetus in this story, which makes it all the worse.
Hello, space babies.
So we're shown how these abominations of nature run the space station with more insufferable baby dialogue.
We need oxygen to breathe.
Shut the fuck up.
Ignoring my bias and hatred for children for a second, maybe this could have worked at being cute. If the babies themselves didn't look so freaky because of their CGI mouths, but because they do look so hideous, all of these lines of dialogue, and in fact almost everything said from the babies, just gives us second-hand embarrassment. Like, why did you write it this way? No disrespect to the kids who did the babies' voices, because despite this show's horrible track record of child actors, they actually all do a decent job considering the shit they had to work with. But also, given how this story, unlike other Russell episodes with goofy concepts, doesn't really poke fun of itself much, and is in fact just stupid, I feel like they should have just gone full meme and actually given the babies adult voices. Get fucking Alec Baldwin to voice one of them. At least it would actually be entertaining.
About what a rude little pig you really are. You are a rude, thoughtless little pig, okay?
A what?
So we get a mystery set up for why the babies were abandoned.
Baby-sized space babies.
Ugh. And the Doctor comforts the babies, reassuring that they aren't wrong despite being abandoned because so was he. Which is a nice scene, don't get me wrong, but it is strange that the story never explains how the babies can talk and haven't grown out of their baby size. Yeah, just accept it because fantasy, I guess. Like it's stated they were born 6 years ago, we then get a scene of the babies blowing their noses. What the fuck am I watching? No, genuinely, I'm just tweaking now. What the fuck am I watching? Seriously, this clusterfuck has been going on for almost 20 minutes now, and not only has there been next to no compelling character stuff, and the plot has barely even started yet I'm currently sat here as a fully grown-ass fucking man watching fucking space little shits with terrible CGI mouths blow their noses, and this is actually meant to be funny? Russell, I can tell you're having a midlife crisis here, but please stop giving Doctor Who that same midlife crisis, because this shit is actually so embarrassing to watch unfold. I honestly don't know how anyone could watch this shit and feel anything other than shame. As much as I've spent years ripping apart Moffat's Doctor Who for very justifiable reasons, I don't think he ever wrote something as audaciously childish as this. Seriously, this shit is like watching a pantomime, and that is not a good thing for something that's meant to be hooking new audiences into watching Doctor Who. My god! I'm not even halfway through the script yet. So the little shits cry and piss about the dog downstairs, and for some reason the Doctor decides to repeatedly scare them about it. And I'm not gonna lie, I kinda love that. Like, he had absolutely no reason to do that in such a dickhead way, but he just did anyway, and then just laughs about it. Honestly, that's some top tier king shit right there. I really wish we got to see more of 15 acting like this, because it's actually just funny.
I'm sorry, babies. Space babies.
And there goes the joke. Ruined.
These babies are trying their best. Space babies.
Fucking stop! So the Doctor speaks to the nanny on a headset very fitting for the year 21506, and they go to find her, before they're interrupted by a flashback scene to a scene that wasn't in the church on Ruby Road, because apparently the memory's starting to change. Okay? And this scene will have massive detrimental consequences for the finale, but we'll get to that. And when we cut back, it's snowing on the spaceship. How and why is it snowing on the spaceship? Well, this is one of the series arcs for this series, that almost whenever Ruby's origin was discussed, it would start to snow, which was actually an interesting story beat through the series, and it did even work effectively in this story as well. But because we now know that this snow was just a load of fucking nonsense, which never actually got an answer, and was just a fake mystery hook, these scenes do nothing in retrospect, and they pretty much all just feel pointless. And so this brain-dead superfluous scene is yet another in this story, which just feels like a fucking waste of time, for fuck's sake! I'm not even halfway through reviewing the first proper story of this series, and I'm already so sick of Russell's bullshit. Seriously, it is so annoying to see him write this way. As passionately fucking furious as I could be at Moffat for writing so terribly, because I know he's capable of so much better, it's even worse fucking seeing Russell write like this, because not only do I know he's capable of writing so much better, I know he's capable of writing so much better while he is also the showrunner. How do I know this? Because he's fucking done it before! He's responsible for the best era in this show's 60-year history, yet here we are in current year, and he's back at the helm giving us this absolute pond scum horseshit.
Well, I don't think that thing could have gone any worse.
So we eventually meet Nanny.
Unless the babies behind space babies.
Stop! Just stop! Shut the fuck up, you cunt! And it turns out she's called Jocelyn. And for the most part, she's actually a decent character. She grounds this very, very stupid story quite well with her realistic approach and down-to-earth attitude. And she's likable enough on her own. I know this again feels like very low bar praise, but lest we forget that despite having 4 companions and too many side characters to count, the Chibnall era had like 2 memorable characters that weren't the Doctor. And one was just memorable because he was Bradley Walsh.
Governess, the second best female planet. The second best female planet.
And the other was memorable because it was Mr. Gibbs from Pirates of the Caribbean. So I'm glad at least the show can make one-off characters likeable and interesting again. So it's revealed that all of the crew members abandoned ship under protest of the company they were working for because the government is in recession, even though it's implied the governments were the ones who made it illegal to close the stations anyway?
Huh?
Yeah, this is kind of all just complete bollocks just in service of the theme of adoption because the Doctor and Ruby both are. Something that even Church on Ruby Road did better than this. And the Church on Ruby Road is pretty mid in case you'd forgotten. Jocelyn then says that she's kept herself hidden away from the little shits because she doesn't want to see them die. And she doesn't want them to see her die. Which is a fucking brilliant line for building up the danger of this story. But it yet again highlights another issue with this story. Because this show has had so many stories in the past where the Doctor takes their companion to a new place, and it seems all bright and wonderful, but he senses that something's going on underneath, and that something's wrong, and it distracts him so much that he can't even enjoy watching the view. That seeing the Doctor clearly clock onto something wrong, but also show a clear lack of urgency on finding out what's wrong, when a lot of the answers are fairly fucking obvious, makes the Doctor in this story seem really, really stupid. Because are we seriously expected to believe that the Doctor, having as much knowledge on the situation that he does, wouldn't have already thought of this outcome from the very, very start? Like, imagine how much more hard-hitting and impactful this scene would have been if the Doctor had been trepidatious throughout the story up to this point. And then, when they're talking to Jocelyn, he finishes the sentence for her in saying that you wouldn't want them to see you die. That would be so much more impactful and actually make the situation they're in and the horror they're actually facing feel more grounded and impactful. But because the Doctor so far in this story has been on a sort of similar level to Ruby, just enjoying everything he's seen at face value, it makes him come off as a belligerent dumbass at this point. You absolute gargoyle cheese. So after establishing a planet that they can land on and more building up about the unnatural creepiness of the bogeyman, Ruby points out that this whole place is like a children's story, before one of the babies is going shown down to go and try and kill the bogeyman. I mean, wow. Wow, seriously? Honestly, if you were stupid enough to do this at any point in life, you deserve to die. So the little shit dies until he doesn't. And you know how he was found by the Doctor? You wanna know in which way? He shit himself, and the smell led him to the Doctor. This is the type of absolute fucking hog's trollop shit I have to show people and still say it's my favourite show, by the way. Also, how the fuck did this little shit within a matter of actual seconds manage to get out of his pram and crawl all the way down this corridor and get into this cupboard? Newsflash, dumbass! Babies are short, slow, and stupid. There is not a chance with billions to fucking 1 odds of possibility that he was fast enough to do all of this, let alone this quickly. Even if these babies are somewhat intelligent. Well, I say somewhat.
I'm doing what Ruby says. What?
We then get some corridor surfing and tense horror build-up, which does actually work effectively and does make the scene feel much more scary, if you can get past the absolutely horrible editing between all of these different cuts and awful distorted lenses. And if you could somehow have the brain power left to make it past all of that shite, we then get the absolute delight of watching the Doctor, yes, the Doctor, get saved by a bunch of little shits with a flamethrower. Oh my god!
Space babies!
Stop saying that, for God's sake! It's so insanely unfunny! Just actually shut the fuck up!
Space babies, you need...
Nah. He's doing it on purpose. He's doing it on purpose! The Doctor then somehow magically whistles another walker down here for the little shit, and wow. I mean, wow. why do I even want to bother anymore? Because why even be able to abide by any sort of logic or standard anymore when the show just makes up shit as it goes along, seemingly with no second thought put into it? There's no rhyme or reason to why any of this shit is even attempting to make sense. I'm fucking losing it. This might seem like an extreme nitpick here, but seriously, just think about all of the strings of stupid bullshit that have just occurred, and now this on top of that? Oh, okay. So. Why did the stroller just appear? Why is the stroller even down here? Why do the babies have a flamethrower? How did they get a flamethrower? Why did the stroller appear when the doctor whistles? Is it the same stroller from before or is it a different one? I don't know. Why am I still watching this shit? So the doctor sends the babies back upstairs before trying to send Ruby up as well. And while I do actually really like this little moment where Ruby objects to his order, it's at this moment in the episode where I have to question why her or Jocelyn don't ask the doctor why they can't just leave. The monster is temporarily gone, the TARDIS is in the clear, and everybody is safe. This is the most perfect opportunity for the doctor to save everyone. But instead, he's determined to find out what the monster is. Which is fine and very in character for the doctor to do, but it's also insanely stupid. He doesn't just save everyone first and then go back and do this. There is literally fuck all stopping him from doing this, but for some reason, Ruby and Jocelyn, you know Jocelyn, the character who's been trapped here with a finite amount of resources and oxygen for 6 fucking years, doesn't even question the doctor trying to stay longer without saving the little shits. Just fucking great! Way to make these people seem like people and not a bunch of useless, fruitless twats! The Doctor Who companion of all time. So they go to the belly of the beast and Ruby slips and then gets thick, droopy, gunky liquid in her hair and on her face. I am simply not going to comment on this. However, I must admit that the Doctor's reaction to this is actually really funny.
Oh, this is disgusting! Don't call me Rubes!
Are we almost there, Joss?
So we get the grand reveal that the bogeyman was created by the education system going haywire and creating a monster under the bed for the babies. Which honestly, I don't actually mind. I think this is a fairly interesting and creative way to integrate the monster into the story naturally, and it does also make sense as to why it's scary, since it emits the perfect sound wave to put fear into a person. But this, however, is ruined within seconds when we find out what the monster is actually made from.
Invented the bogeyman.
For the baby.
The space babies.
Oh,
The bogeyman is made from actual snots.
Oh, okay.
Honestly, as incredibly mindless and daft as this story has been, this reveal isn't the worst thing ever, but honestly, my investment in this story is so criminally low at this point that I'm so done. I just want the experience of this never-ending nosebleed to end.
Oh, babes. Space babes. We saw it.
oh my God! This is the worst thing that could ever happen to anyone talking loud!
This motherfucker was born on the planet Charisma from the constellation of Aura. My God! He's so much fun to watch, to do almost just anything. He can make it look entertaining. Ignoring the constant insistence that the awful title to this story is the funniest shit ever, 15 and Shooty have been one of the few things carrying me through this story. So we get another terribly edited chase sequence before Jocelyn decides to try and eject the snot monster. Honestly, I'm not even too opposed to this, as it could show off some interesting differences in morality between the Doctor and other characters, which could lead to some interesting drama, even though this is very out of left field, since Snotman has, again, been around for 6 years, but has done ultimately fuck all. But instead, it's just used again to once again reinforce how the Doctor is the last of his kind, and the bogeyman is the only one of his kind. Wow, where have I seen this before?
What if you were really old? Your whole race dead. No future. If you were that old and that kind, and the very last of your kind, you couldn't just stand there and watch children cry.
Shut up. Also, this isn't going to be the first time I mention this, as I'm pretty sure I literally mentioned it in the last review. But did Russell literally forget what the point of the 60th was? To wipe the slate clean and show the Doctor without a burden on his shoulders? Yeah, right, okay, whatever. The story that sacrifices every plot beat in the stupidest way imaginable for this new direction for the character, and 2 stories later it's being completely ignored. Fucking great! Brilliant! Fantastic even! Fuck you! And it also doesn't help how many earth-shatteringly dumb contrivances are in this scene. First of all, the most obvious of which is that the Doctor exclaims how the snot monster is one of the children made in the farm, yet, for some reason, we get no reaction shot from Jocelyn hearing this. Strange. It's almost as if this scene would have been entirely prevented had she known this, because if she did, she obviously wouldn't kill it. You know how I know this?
You save them all.
It's almost as if this would make her look 100 times worse and severely out of character had her reaction been shown and she still chose to ignore it. So without that pretty crucial scene or shot existing, it makes her look like an absolute fucking nutter with inconsistent morals. And it also makes the ending scene of this story play out really strangely. On top of that...
You're hurting him. Stop it, Nanny. Stop it.
Why do you care all of a sudden? On top of that, despite being in a fucking airlock with nothing to grab onto, as you can clearly see here, well, about as clearly as you possibly can through this fucking filter, the Snotman then slips and grabs onto... I don't know what this is supposed to be. On top of that, the Doctor goes in the airlock, and instead of just getting immediately pulled out into space, since, you know, the Doctor is just above the laws of physics at this point, he manages to hang on for an amount of time that shouldn't even matter, because regardless of how long it is, it's too fucking long. He then does this. Ignoring how blatantly fucking ridiculous and absurd it is that he didn't just immediately get sucked out through the hole, it makes so much less sense that when he lets go, he just goes directly backwards. Are you fucking for real? Also, your back should be fucked and you should have a concussion, you infallible delinquent.
My back! Oh, my back!
My God! That scene was awful. And it really makes you think what the difference is between stabbing the Goblin King for basically no reason when you didn't need to, over fucking saving a literal, actual snot monster, which was made by mistake. Coming from a mistake myself, it's safe to say this thing is ultimately harmless, regardless. But I don't know, man. Morals seem kind of insistent to me. While it might have successfully done fuck all in those 6 years, it clearly still has the intention of hurting people. So what are you even gonna do with it? Just keep it in a cage? Keep it in the ship? So Ruby stops the suddenly out of character Jocelyn and we get an overly pretentious ending with everyone all happy and cheerful, as if murder wasn't just attempted for no reason. Wow.
Babies, space babies.
And then the Doctor uses the stored up shit to fart away the space station. This is so insanely embarrassing to even say out loud, I don't know if I can scream at this shit anymore. Ignoring the fact that this utter bollocks is completely unnecessary considering the TARDIS is free, this is just an absolute humiliation to even watch, let alone comment on how stupid it is. How did the same man who wrote multiple of the greatest episodes of Doctor Who of all time write a scene where the Doctor uses stored up fart and shit and piss and cum to propel a ship through space? What even is this show anymore? And then for some ungodly reason, the Doctor then gives Ruby a TARDIS key. Where did this come from exactly? How did this episode further their relationship enough to the point where the Doctor can trust her enough to give her this? Haven't they in-universe known each other for less than a fucking day? Yeah, sure, whatever. Yet another scene of the Doctor and Ruby with their out-of-nowhere chemistry getting along with no interest in confliction whatsoever. And he's already given her a TARDIS key. This has got to be the most undeserving of a TARDIS key any companion has ever had before. And also, bear in mind that Mickey, Amy, and Rory never got a TARDIS key despite the amount of time they spent in the TARDIS. Yet, here's Ruby's! Oh. Like, the scene itself isn't bad, and probably would have worked brilliantly had it happened halfway through the series or something like that. But with there being practically no build-up to this, it just feels so unearned and forced. It's just an underwhelming as fuck moment.
Where's the character development?
How do you know you're not looking at her?
You think I'm a fool?
So the Doctor tells Ruby he can never take her to the church, which is actually a well done scene, and we end up getting then yet another scene, which would have been way more effective had it been in another story, where Ruby goes home. And this scene on its own, again, I don't really have a problem with, but it just feels a bit out of nowhere and really out of place in this story, considering the astronomically low stakes throughout. This would have been a much better ending to The Devil's Chord. I do find it interesting that the Doctor is keeping tabs on Ruby to see why the random shit with her occurs, but then also now knowing that this stupid bullshit piss droplet snow is meaningless, this just does nothing. Oh, and then the Doctor tells Ruby his real name.
Whether you know my name, you whispered my name in my ear. There's only one reason I would ever tell anyone my name. There's only one time I could.
Yeah, I don't see why the Doctor wouldn't tell someone that he just fucking met his real name over anyone who he's travelled with for much longer. Because that's just so in character, isn't it? So, that was...
Space babies!
Shut the fuck up! My god, this episode was awful! This episode is genuinely such a fucking slog of an experience, it is near painful to watch throughout. This episode is genuinely such a fucking slog of an experience that it is nigh impossible to watch and be engaged throughout. While the Doctor and Ruby are undeniably entertaining to watch, in some scenes it's also undeniable that their chemistry and relationship is just nothing. Like, they act like best mates immediately, and with there being no build-up or no conflict at any point for either of them, it can make them dull as fuck to watch. And it also doesn't help that this story, similarly to the last one, shamelessly rips off story beats from a much superior story in Series 1, written by the same person, yet somehow lacks anything that made the original scenes and story work as well as they do. And similarly to Rose, I also don't even think The End of the World is a good story. It's also pretty whack at points, and kinda dull by today's Doctor Who standards. But considering how well Nine and Rose are written throughout, building up their relationship throughout the whole story, while adding lore to the Doctor's character, as well as just being a fun and enjoyable creature feature, with loads of creative ideas throughout, that absolutely destroys everything in this stupid story. Like, ignoring the fact for a minute that this episode revolves around annoying little shits that look mortifying, it's made all the worse that this stupid concept is taken so lightly, despite it having pretty decent potential. An abandoned baby farm, left ran by one person, but because of the system going haywire, it creates a monsters downstairs that they're afraid of. Ignoring a lot of the nitty gritty stupid details like how the abandonment doesn't really add up, and the monster is made out of fucking snots, that is actually an actually interesting idea, and it's very creative. But almost every decision in this story that Russell makes make it so fucking infuriating to watch. It drives you absolutely livid by the end. Jocelyn was the only person in this episode to actually be written out and presented in a decent way, but even she gets character assassinated by the end of the story, making Space Babies an absolutely awful episode to watch, and by far the worst one of RTD2 I've reviewed so far. And yes, this does mean there is finally an episode worse than the Star Beast, at least from a plot level. Man just gave one of the most charismatic actors to play the Doctor ever, two of the worst introductory stories to a Doctor ever. Shoot, you deserve better than this. And so did Millie Gibson. And speaking of deserving better than this, up next is The Devil is a Liar. One of the 7 Doctor Who episodes I had as a child when I was younger. Why did I write it this way? What the shit, man? This is actually a thing. What the fuck? It's a thing, yeah. I'd assume so.